Hello, this is Scotty McCoy. I am the author of the Ultimate Friday the 13th trivia book, and I'm doing another book titled The Ultimate Slasher Movie Encyclopedia. And I am interviewing the cast and crew of the Friday the 13th franchise. And I have on the phone with me my favorite Jason, Ted White. He played the iconic Jason Voorhees in Friday the 13th, the final chapter. Hi, Ted. How you doing? I'm doing great. I adored you in Friday the 13th. You were so menacing. It was just a great character. You played him with the utmost respect to the character.
Oh, scary, scary, scary. That's all I thought about, Scott. When I got that part, in fact, I'd never even seen Friday the 13th. I hate to say that, but I had never seen it. So I really didn't know what I was getting into.
Right.
But after meeting the kids, and most of them were all first timers in motion pictures, a few of them had done one or two shows before, but nobody really had any motion picture experience. I got a kick out of it. I enjoyed working with them. A lot of fun.
That's great. So the first question I got for you is, how did you get your start into acting?
Into acting?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, really and truly, I didn't. The only start I got into acting is, I've worked in the business for 60 years, and if your audience don't know it, I'm now 92 years old. But in that 60 years that I worked in the business, I worked with some of the best actors that I guess that's ever been on the silver screen. And start out with John Wayne, Clark Gable, Victor Mature, Rock Hudson, going down the line. Great actors, great actors. And, you watch them day after day, and you're on the show sometimes for weeks and weeks. I never took a class in acting. I really didn't. I don't know if I'd have ever passed it had I taken the class. But after watching all these people for all the years that I've been in the business, it kind of came natural to me not to try to act, but just be Ted White, and that's what I did. I wasn't really acting; I was just being myself.
That's great. That's the best way to do it, because when you're your true self, the best performance you can give is going to be right there.
Well, I hope you're right.
So, what was your audition like for Friday the 13th, the final chapter?
The audition?
Yes.
Well, when I got there, there were there were six other guys waiting out. Well, they weren't outside. It was in the hallway, sitting on a long bench, and they were calling him in by the way the last name started. So, being Ted White, I was the last one to go in. And each guy went in, and they were in there for 15, 20 minutes, sometimes 5 minutes. And then they exit through another door. We never saw them leave. But when they leave, the secretary would come out and ask the last one to come in. And this went on. So I was out there for probably, I'm going to say, maybe hour and 20, hour and 30 minutes, somewhere in that neighborhood. I really didn't keep track of it. It's not unusual to be on an interview and be that long, or even longer, depending on how many people they had. But I wasn't aware of Friday the 13th. I wasn't aware of what it consisted of or anything on it, because I'd never seen it, and I hadn't talked to anybody else that had ever seen it. So when they called me in, I read for the part of a policeman, and I read that, and they said, "Would you please go back outside and wait a few minutes? We'll let you know." So I came back in a few minutes. They called me back, and they said, "Well, we're going to go ahead and go with you, Ted. We like the reading." And I said, "Well, that's nice. Thank you very much." And I said, "That's the policeman." They said, "No, we want you to do Jason." Well, now, I had never seen Friday. Like I said, I'm being a little redundant here, but not having ever seen it, I didn't really know what Jason did or anything about him. But I had read part of the script while I was waiting, and I said, "Well, Jason, as I understand it, is a killer. He doesn't say anything." They said, "That's right, he doesn't." And I said, "Well, you know what? My boys have now got kids, and I don't think they'd like to see their grandfather out there killing people. So I'm going to have to say thank you very much for the time you've taken with me and allow me to come in and read for you, but I'm going to pass." And they said, "You're sure?" And I said, "Yeah, absolutely positive." They said, "Well, Ted, you ought to think it over. It's a nice place for you to start in this kind of a bit." I said, "No, no, no, no. That's not exactly right. It's not a nice place for me to start." I said, "I've been doing major motion pictures now for nearly 40 years at that time." And I said, "So don't tell me I'm just getting started." They said, no, we didn't mean it that way. We meant in the horror genre. And I said, oh, well, that's different. I've never done one of them. They said, don't you think you ought to get your feet wet a little bit and try one? And I said, no, like I told you, I don't want my grandkids to see me out there killing people. And so I left. Oh. And the prop guy, who only lived about 2 blocks from me, and he called me and he said, I hear you were at the studio today. And I said, yeah. He said, what happened? And I said, well, I read for the part of a policeman, but they gave me the part of Jason. He said, oh, that's terrific. He said, that's great. Jason. He said, oh, my God, Ted. Hey, you're going to really love that. And I said, well, I turned it down. He said, why? And I said, well, you know, all he does is kill people. There's no dialogue, nothing. And on top of all that, they never really see me. I got a mask on, and when I don't have it, I've got the other rubber face or whatever they're going to make for me on, so they never really actually see my face at all. Right. And he said, well, let me tell you something. They have to make a body cast from your waist up. You would be on hold for 6 weeks. And I said, 6 weeks for body cast? They can make that in 1 day. He said, no, not the way they make it. 6 weeks you'll be on hold. Now, for your audience, when you're on hold in the motion picture business, you're on full pay. And I said, you know what? I think I've rethought my working habits, and I'm possibly going to have to take that show since I'm not doing anything else. and that's exactly what happened. I called them back. I said, you know what, guys? I think I'll go ahead and do your show.
That's awesome.
And I've never regretted it. I really haven't, because I met some wonderful, wonderful kids along the way.
That's awesome. So, I know it's been a long time, but out of all the kills that you did in Friday the 13th Part 4, the final chapter, which one was your favorite and why?
The kills, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's a little difficult to answer, really. But I think the one that I thought probably was the most menacing of all of them was the one in the bathroom.
Yep.
Where I pushed his face into the wall.
Yeah.
Or his back of his head into the wall. I think that probably was, I don't know. I don't know what the audience thought about it, because the audience had seen a lot of this stuff in the past where I had never seen any of it. So for me to say which is the best is really not fair to the audience or to you and for this interview, because who am I to judge? Really, I'm not a judge of it.
That's true.
What's the best and which isn't the best.
I'll let you know though, the bathroom scene, that one terrified me so much that every time I had to take a shower, I had to look outside the curtain when I was younger. That one really terrified me, I'm not gonna lie.
Well, listen, I can tell you stuff that was funnier than that, really, if you want to hear that part of the business.
Definitely.
We were working, and you know where Topanga Canyon is here in Los Angeles?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you know, Topanga Canyon is in a depth of ground next to Topanga Canyon, the highway that goes over the mountain.
Right.
And down there is about 40 feet to the bottom of the canyon. And that's where the home was. The 2 houses were where we were shooting and everything. And it was about 2 o'clock in the morning, I guess. And we were into it. I think we were in our about 8th or 9th day of it. And I had on the rubber piece that went over my head with the big cut in it and the blood and all on it and everything. And I was going up to the honey wagon to my dressing room and get something. And there was a car parked right next to it where I couldn't get in the door. And so I walked around to the other side, and there were 2 African-American guys there. And as I walked by, they said, hey, bro, what's going on down there? You guys making a movie? And I walked back, and I stuck my head down in the car, and I said, yeah, we are. And with that, they saw that face. And I'm going to tell you, they burned rubber. They left there so quick, you couldn't believe how fast they left.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I would love to see that though.
Well, that's probably one of the only funny things that ever happened on the movie that I thought was funny.
So what was?
A lot of fun.
That's awesome. So what was your most memorable moment while filming Friday the 13th, the final chapter?
My most memorable moment. All right, I think I can answer that one pretty easy. And I hate to tell this story because it makes one person look very, very bad. And it makes me look like a hero, and that's not the way it was. That's not the way it was at all. But I'll tell it to you. Judy Aaronson, you know who that is, of course.
Yes.
She was in a little rubber raft and in the lake, and this is in January, and it's very, very cold, around 28 or 29 degrees. And I'm supposed to come up in the water underneath her and run a spear through the raft and in through her and kill her. And so that's a shot. So they put her in the raft. She has a bikini bathing suit on. You have to remember it's 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the morning. It's so cold, 23 degrees. She's in the water with the bikini bathing suit on, and it's freezing cold. And they're setting the camera up, and people that don't know this, in the motion picture business, setting up a camera and getting a new setup for a new shot requires anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour, 10, hour, 20, depending on how many people are in the shot. Well, in this case, there were only 2, me and her, and the boat, and the little rubber boat in the water. So, but they never thought of that ahead of time. They went ahead and had her get the whole world on and get in the boat, not the boat, but the rubber tube, and they put her out in the water. And now they're setting the camera up on the bank to shoot this. Meanwhile, she's still out there, and she'd been out there for 30, 40 minutes, and I hear her call Joe Zito, who was the director, and say, "Please, Mr. Zito, I'm freezing to death out here. Can I come in for a minute?" He said, "No, we'll be loading film right now. We'll be ready in just a few minutes." Well, I looked at her, and her teeth were shattering so bad, and she huddled again. She said, "Please, I've got to get out for just a minute." And he said, "No." And I walked up, and I said, "Zito, if you don't let her out, I'm going to walk off this film." He said, "What do you mean you're going to walk?" I said, "I'm going to turn around and walk off, get in my car, and go home." "You can't do that." And I said, "You think I can't? Watch me." And I turned around and started walking. He said, "Wait a minute, come back. I'll get her out." So they got her out, and I want to tell you what, from that day to today, she is still has repercussions from it. It was so bad, her nose, her eyes, ears.
Oh my God.
She's been going to doctors for years and years, and if you ever have a chance to interview her, she'll tell you the same story.
I would love to interview her.
She's a great gal. She
Awesome.
Really, and what a trooper.
Oh. Awesome. Do you have any contact info for her?
With her?
Yeah.
Yes, she's gone. My agent, I talked to my agent about her, and he took her on. And sometimes when I go on these conventions, he sends her with me, and she does very well. She's well known, of course, because that story got out, and I don't know how it got out. I never told anybody about it, but it got out, and when I would go on conventions, 90% of the time you have a Q&A,
right.
And for your audience, that Q&A consists of questions and answers, and you get up on stage, and the audience has different microphones they pass around, and they ask you questions about the show and so forth.
Right.
And they all had read that, and so they all want me to tell the story over again, and I've told the story time and time again.
Wow.
But I guess that's probably one of the highlights of the film for me.
Awesome. So would you be able to maybe get me in touch with Judy then?
Beg pardon?
Would you be able to help me get in touch with Judy?
I don't understand what we're talking about now.
Oh, no, I said, would you be able to help me get in touch with Judy also for an interview?
To help you do what?
To get me, to get Judy Aaronson for an interview. Do you have, like...
Get Judy Aaronson?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can call her and tell her, sure.
Awesome, thank you.
Right. Yeah, I'll give her a call this afternoon, let her know.
Awesome, thank you so much. The next question I have is, what was the best part of filming about Friday the 13th Part 4, and what was the worst?
The best part? Well, I think the best part was, as you know, the little boy at that time I think he was either 9 or 10 years old, and on the set with a bunch of adults. The kid had nothing. He wasn't there with any toys or anything. He's there to do a little part. Right. And he did the part very well. I thought he was very, very good at it.
Okay.
But he was very mischievous. He was always into trouble. And what he would do is sneak up behind me and have a little leaf or something and tickle the back of my neck. And some of this stuff was shot in the evening when it was cool. But I was still hot with the mask and stuff on. I mean, the rubber features were on.
Right.
And this would keep me, I'd keep reaching behind to scratch what it was. And finally I found out it was him. Well, that was one way. And then he did several things just to irritate me.
Mm-hmm.
And I told his mother, I said, you better keep him away from me because if he gets too close, I'm going to pinch him. I'll just reach over and pinch him. And she said, what's he doing? I said, well, he's irritating me. And I said, there's no reason for it.
Right.
Well, I had my opportunity, and it's in the film. Well, the shot's not in the film, the way it happened.
Okay.
There's a scene where I crashed through a window with my arm when he puts his head there, and I jerk him halfway through the window.
Mm-hmm.
And then when that happened, you can see the terror on his face. That scared him to death. He threw up all over me and himself and half the set. They had to cut. He had to go to wardrobe. Had to get new wardrobe. They had to clean up the set. It was about a 2-hour break.
Wow. That's hilarious.
But now I've worked with him since then. I've seen him in different conventions and everything. And he's a nice young man. He's grown up now, and I think he's married.
Right.
In some other kind of business. So I think he's in the music business.
Yeah.
But he's a nice young man.
That's nice. And what was the worst part of filming?
The worst part of filming was the different places we filmed in that weren't easy to work with. I mean, the house was dark, and we had rain. We made our own rain, of course.
Right.
And and at night, and it's cold, and it's rainy, and that was very difficult. I had to do one of the courtyard things where I chased the lady across from one house to another.
Right.
It was just miserable conditions. That's all.
Yeah. So how did they film the death scene of Jason at the end of the movie?
How did they film my death?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we had an earthquake here in 1994, and we had a hospital out in a town called Northridge that had this big, beautiful hospital, and it was condemned. And they did have the studio got rights to go in there and shoot in the morgue section of it.
Okay.
And now that I'm thinking about this, there is a funny sequence here. Anyway, we're there, and they hired a couple of extra girls, and all they're doing is I'm on a gurney, and they're pushing me into the what the heck is the name of it? The morgue. They're pushing me into the morgue because I'm dead now.
Right.
And so I'm laying on the gurney, and the director's talking to me, and the crew's all around me and everything. And finally, I've got this rubber mask over my face that has all the blood and stuff on it. Mm-hmm. And they finally pulled a sheet up over my head and called these two extras in. They made nurses out of them. They were in white gowns. Now, this gurney that they had me on had a railing on both sides of it. That's to keep me from rolling over or something falling off. I guess a stiffs or some time or other would fall off of them or something happened. But anyway, it had rails on it. We were only about 6 inches high. Well, this girl that's pushing me on one side put her hands up on that railing, and on action, they start pushing me toward the morgue. And the one on the other side goes and opens the morgue doors, and this girl starts to pushing me in. I got just my head in, and I reached out with my hand, and grabbed her wrist that was over the railing, and I'm telling you, well, the audience can listen to it if they want, but she pees her pants. It scares her to death. It literally scares her to death. And I had to apologize to her over and over again. The girl had to go out. They had to change wardrobe. It was a mess.
Wow. But
to me, I've always looked back on it and thought it was one of the funniest pranks I've ever pulled.
So what about the ending scene then, when Kimberly Beck's character ended up putting the machete in your head?
Well, of course, the machete in the hand, Tom Savini set that all up.
Okay.
And you know who Tom Savini is,
yeah.
Of course. Yeah. And he set that all up, and they had a false hand with the machete going through it and the blood coming out and all that.
All right.
I'm actually sitting by the camera when that's being shot.
Nice. What about at the end then, when the machete it goes down your eye socket? How do they film all that?
Say that again.
Like when the machete goes down into your eye socket and all that.
Again, that was Tom Savini. He had a complete head made up, and then he has the knife has a hollow spot in it where he can put blood, and he's off camera, and he can squirt a tube. He has a rubber tube in his hand, and when he presses it, the blood comes out of the knife, and that was a real tight shot, of course.
Wow,
that's
really
how
cool.
that was shot. Yeah.
So what was it like
I know that's not interesting to the audience, but a lot of the stuff we do in the motion picture business, as you know, is really boring, very boring, and because it's simple. But it's simple, but it's a fooler. It fools people thinking it's the real thing.
Exactly.
And that's what the motion picture business is about anyway.
Yes. So what was it like working with Kimberly Beck?
With Tito?
Kimberly Beck.
Oh, Kimberly. Well, you know what? I only had the one scene with her. That's up in the bedroom upstairs.
Right.
She's a trooper. Now, the fighting that she did with me and everything was good, very good. And we rehearsed that several times to get her to get enough strength to do what she had to do, especially when she hits me over the head with the television set and all that. Well, she's a trooper, though. She stood right in there, and she had never done anything like that. You know, she's a good actress. I don't know why she even had a part in that show, but I guess like me, she wasn't working at that time, and when the part came up, she took the job.
Right.
But she did a wonderful job. She's good. She's a good friend of mine to this day.
Awesome. How was Joseph Zito as a director?
Well, I think I told you about the thing with Joe Zito and the girl in the tube and stuff, and told him that I would walk. And word for word, I'll tell you exactly what I told Joe Zito. When we got the girl out and I saw how blue she was and what was happening to her, I turned to him and I said, Zito, you are a bad, and I'm not going to use the cuss words I called him, but I said, when this show's over with, I'm going to kick your ass.
Wow.
And that's the way I left it. And from that day to this, if I've ever seen him, I'm going to fulfill that promise.
You did a very commendable thing for her, though, because if it wasn't for you, then she could have been a lot worse than it actually is, and it's bad enough to begin with.
Well, you know what? I don't know why she hadn't sued the studio.
Oh, I agree.
She's got problems. She's still having problems to this day.
It's insane.
Her ears, her throat, her eyes. It's a very bad situation. She goes in once every month or 2 months, and they have to give her all kinds of, I don't know. But Judy's just a trooper. She doesn't say anything about it. She's gone with me a couple of times on conventions, and she just says, well, it's what it is, and that's it. And she doesn't go any further with it than that. I'm one of her biggest fans. I really am.
Awesome. That is great. What was the most challenging stunt you had to do while filming Friday the 13th, the final chapter?
Let me tell you something, my friend. I've been in this business for 60 years, and I've been a professional stuntman all that time.
Right.
There was no challenging stunts in that for me. That was like a child's play. Running across the yard in the rain, that's the biggest stunt I had to do. My God, I didn't do anything. Nothing, really nothing. I hate for the audience to hear it that way because they probably think I did this and that, but I didn't. No, there was nothing.
All right, so how about this? How about this one then? What was your most challenging stunt you ever had to do in your career?
Motion picture we did in Africa in 1960 called Hatari.
Okay.
Howard Hawks took me over there. We shot it over there. And the very opening scene in it is Bruce Cabot is in a Jeep, and he's going across a desert. We were in the Ngorongoro crater, which is a 12-mile crater, deep crater, and it's full of wild animals. And the opening shot of the show is a rhino charges him in this Jeep and gores him through the left leg. He's a passenger. And we had to reenact that, and only we did it with a real rhino. By the way, that show, the associate producer was Paul Helmick. He's now passed away, a nice gentleman. But he wrote a book called Cut Print. And in that book, he writes about what happened that day with the rhino and me. But also that day, he was on the camera car watching. We nearly got killed, me and the guy driving the Jeep. The rhino, he turned the wheel the wrong way when the rhino charged. And the rhino put his horn underneath the seat that I was in. And now this is one of those Jeeps that has no doors on it. You've seen the old Army Jeep?
Yep.
He flipped that Jeep. The Jeep went about 4 or 5 feet in the air, turning over rolling over, not end on end, but sideways.
Right.
Threw both of us out, and luckily it rolled over. In the air, it went over the top of both of us.
Huh.
And then the rhino started back at both of us again, and the camera car cut between us and the rhino, and then it followed the camera car off.
Wow.
And we finally got that Jeep back up, and I had been reading about this shot for weeks and weeks and weeks, and it was keeping me awake at night, because that's not really a stunt. That's daredevil stuff, and I'm not a daredevil. Well, it was. And so Paul Helmick said, well, cut, that's a wrap for today. And I said, Paul, I don't sleep a lot of nights because of this thing, the opening shot. I want to do it again. I want to get it out of my system so I can get some rest. He said, are you sure? And I said, I certainly am. I want a different guy driving. Huh. And we got one of the young white hunters to do the driving.
Wow.
We shot it again, and we got the shot we wanted.
Awesome. So what was the environment like on set?
On Hatari?
No, on Friday the 13th.
Oh, it was good. I think after that episode with Judy, Zito kind of lightened up. But see, he was under a tremendous amount of pressure, too.
Right.
Mancuso Jr. was our executive producer, and he was on set quite a bit. A young man. His dad was the head of Paramount.
Right.
And a fine, fine young man. He's a great golfer. But, the director's always under pressure. He's got to get X amount of scenes done in a day. Right. And if they fall behind and they get too far behind, they'll pull the plug on him and do it another time, do the rest of it another time.
Right.
So when you're under that kind of pressure, you really don't, this is just my opinion, you really don't do your best work.
Right. That's true. That is true.
That is true.
So, what is the experience like doing conventions after all these years and fans still wanting to meet you knowing that you were Jason?
I just came back. I came back last Monday, a week ago today. I was in New Jersey for a week, and but the convention was only 3 days. But I'm there a day early, and then I'm there a day after the convention's over with. But those conventions, to me, are really a hoot. I really enjoy them because I get to talk to so many people, and they want to hear about Clark Gable. They want to talk about John Wayne. Right. And that's after they come over and buy a picture or a mask or something. But you can't fool our people that are coming to these conventions. They know everybody, and they know what you've done.
Yep.
They look you up on IMDb, and for the audience, IMDb is what you can go on your phone, your iPhone, and look up what I've done. All you have to do is just type in or say to it, Ted White, professional stuntman, and it'll tell you everything I've done in the last 60 years.
Yep.
Well, the audience that we work with, they know all that. They know every bit of that. So when they come up to your table, they're very well learned in what's going on about you and what you've done in the past. And it's fun. It's a lot of fun for me.
That's great.
Although, at this last one, there's another gentleman that did Friday the 13th. He did 4 of them, Kane Hodder.
Yes.
He had a little bad thing happen. I'm not talking out of school. Everybody knows about it now. I don't know why you guys don't know it. A friend of his came over to his desk. Now, his desk and mine were only about 3 feet apart. And Kane had a machete in his hand, holding it with the blade down, the long blade facing the desk down. And the man came over and laid his arm down where Kane raised the machete up to show it to one of the customers, and he laid his arm down right where the machete had been. Well, Kane, not seeing him do that, turned around and put the machete back, but he just barely touched his arm. The guy jerked his arm back, and it cut clear across the top of his arm about, I'm going to say, maybe 1/8 of an inch deep.
Wow.
But you would have thought it cut his arm off. I mean, the blood went everywhere.
That's insane.
And the people were they went berserk. I mean, they couldn't think of. People just didn't know what to think. They didn't think. They knew that it wasn't. He wasn't going to kill the guy or anything, but they just couldn't believe that somebody got cut.
Right.
With a machete.
Oh my goodness.
But they hauled him off and took him to the hospital and took some stitches in him.
Wow.
But the person that hurt was Kane, and poor Kane, he couldn't come back to his desk. He was gone for 4 or 5 hours.
Wow.
And his people in line stood there, and that's a fact. They stood in line for 4 or 5 hours waiting, knowing he would come back eventually.
Wow.
And he did come back. And I, like a big idiot, got up, and there was a big towel in my desk. I went over and cleaned all the blood off his table and all around on the floor and stuff. But that was all that happened.
Oh wow, that's crazy.
Well,
Go ahead. Oh, what does it feel like knowing you are only one of a select few to portray the iconic and legendary Jason Voorhees in Friday the 13th films?
Well, after meeting the people that go to this movie, the horror fans, I consider myself very, very lucky to have done one.
Right.
And you know, I was offered 5 and 6, and I turned them down. Well, I turned them down because I was working.
Right.
But I turned them down. I look back on it now. If I'd have gone ahead and done them, like Kane did 4, well, it's like $1 million gift certificate. That's what it comes from. If you do that many, he's done 4, and I'm not saying how much money he makes, but he does extremely well. I'll put it that way.
Right.
You know, but all the Jasons, they go do very well.
That's great. And the last question I got for you is, what do you have any like future projects in the works that you would like to tell the readers about?
Well, no, I met an old buddy of mine. I did a movie years ago. What's the Dickens? Now my mind's going blank on me. Oh my goodness! And he was a director on it, and I met him at the airport when we were leaving New York. What was it? My goodness! It was Jeff Bridges. Boy. I can't even think. I can't think of the name of that movie. Oh, Starman. And I was sitting in the airport in New Jersey, and he came in and sat down beside me with his entourage, and we'd been talking. I hadn't seen him since I did Starman. I hadn't seen him since then, but he was at the convention that I was at. And he doesn't put a banner up over his desk.
Right.
People know who's there, and they lined up. But now he's charging, I think, $125 a signature. But he has tons of people waiting, and there's just no way he can get up and go out and do anything.
Right.
It's just too many people want his signature. He's a wonderful guy, and I'll put it this way: I thought. I didn't know. He's telling me in the airport that the next thing he wants to do, if he gets the opportunity, he wants to direct a big Western.
Okay.
And he was asking me about what would be a good location for Westerns. As you probably know, I did a ton of Westerns with John Wayne.
Yeah. That's cool. So, are you gonna star in anything with them then? Do you have anything working with them?
Well, you know what? I don't think so. Not at this time in my life.
Okay.
I'm in good health. I'm very active. I play golf. I play tennis, and I work out.
That's awesome.
But behind my home, I have a big woodworking shop that's my hobby, woodworking. I build furniture.
Awesome.
And I do that as a hobby. And so no, I have no aspirations of ever doing another movie. The last movie I did was Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift.
Okay. Well, you had 60 years of film under your belt. I mean, you put in your dues for acting, and you did a wonderful job in Friday the 13th, and, you worked with legendary guys like John Wayne and Clark Gable. I mean, you had an extraordinary career.
Well, let me say this to you and your audience.
Okay.
Thank you for letting me bore you for the last 15 or 20 minutes.
Not a problem.
I'm sorry that I'm not more exciting in what I'm talking to you about, but that's the life of an old stuntman, and they don't have a lot of things to talk about other than stunt work, and I don't want to bore you with that.
You didn't bore me at all. I could tell you, Greg Gilbert, he was the one that got you to agree to an interview with me, and the fact is, he said you were a really amazing interview, and I have to say he was not wrong. He did not disappoint. You did an amazing job. I had a great time talking to you. I'm a huge fan, so it was great to actually talk to my favorite Jason of the franchise.
Oh, what a compliment that is. Thank you so very much. I
Not a
do
problem.
appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Ted.
Okay, pal. Take
Yep,
care of
you
yourself.
too.
God bless.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.